Good afternoon, and welcome back to TV Collective Live for this really exciting session. Actually, I'm really excited. This is about wildlife filming, natural history filming, how we can get into it, how we need more of it. And actually, we had a session. I think it was our Global Insight session where they spoke about I think it was drama and the natural history being one of the biggest exporters or one of the biggest content makers, content being made currently. So I'd love to kind of chop that up. Thank you for you guys. Welcome. Sorry, my brain will kick into gear. Thank you. It's good to see you guys. Thank you for joining us. Lily, I know that these guys know, but should we do, because this is the first session kind of the day, shall we do a quick whiz tour, a whiz bang tour around the platform? So I'm sure everybody knows. Have we got anybody new? Does everybody know? Do they need to hear this again? Or do you think that they're all experts by now, Lily?
I see one person in here called Trish. Hello, Trish. You're new.
Hey,
Um,
Trish, welcome.
sorry to sing you out. Welcome. So Trish, this one is for you. Mwah. So for everybody else, you'll hear it again. Everybody loves listening to Lily. So welcome to TVC Live Online Festival. Obviously, you are in Carina Thomas's session. We're going to be getting into how to get into nature documentary very shortly. Firstly, I would like to turn your attention to the black bar at the top of your web browser. That is the festival menu. So you'll see on the left-hand side the TV Collective Live logo, and then the first button in is the schedule, however you say it. The schedule holds all our sessions, past, present, and future. If you have missed any sessions, you can replay them inside the schedule. And if you have any sessions coming that you don't forget about, you can request a calendar reminder for them. A few buttons over, you'll see the little two people icon. This is the people tab, funnily enough. And it's our favorite, isn't it, Simone? So you can see
It
everybody
is
attending
indeed.
the festival, and you can also see everybody online right now at the festival. Our favorite thing about this is you get to see everybody's profiles, however they've completed them. Try and put your photos in. And you can also see a couple of buttons at the bottom there. One of them is a little speech bubble, and one of them is looks like an Outlook calendar. This allows you to direct message that person or request 10 minutes of their time. This is a function that comes with the festival platform, and Simone and I can't control it. We can't switch off. So that includes literally everybody at the festival, including Carina. So obviously be responsible. But Carina is available. As we say here at the TVC, your network is your net worth. So you use that liberally, please. Down the right hand side of your screen, the grey menu is our in session menu. So at the top, we've got chit chat, just like Zoom. I'm going to post hi. So this is where we can have our little comments or perhaps reach out to each other. If you have any questions for Simone or Carina throughout the session, please use the QA speech bubble logo just underneath the chat. This helps me moderate because that's where I'll be backstage moderating and bringing you up on stage. And if there is anything that Simone or Carina refer to that we can link back to, any links or any resources or any further reading, you will find them in the resources section, which is the one logo up from the bottom, looks like pages. And that's my time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lily. I hope you appreciate that. Trish, I hope you appreciated that. That was for you. But I mean, it's good that you guys are using the platform. Also, remember we've got a lounge that you guys can go and connect with each other, and also there's one-to-one advice with experts happening as well at the moment. So and I know they're 10-minute sessions, so if you have to dip in and dip out, please make sure you stay here because it's going to be a good session. Right, let's jump into it. Carina Thomas is a natural history producer and director who's worked across iconic series like Earth Sounds for Apple TV, David Attenborough's Life in Color for Netflix, and BAFTA award-winning the Big Blue Live, sorry, for BBC. She's the founder of the Wild Film Club Hub. Carina, host of the Wild Film Hub podcast, which aims to increase diversity and inclusion within natural history, and is a specialist factual television producer. So, welcome, Karina. It's great for this to have you here. Tell me first, wildlife, natural history. It's kind of rare to see a woman of color working in the space. Well, that's my probably my stereotype. See, I don't come across many people like yourself. Tell me kind of where your interest started and how you kind of got into working in this area of specialist factual.
Mhm. Um, I've always loved wildlife. And I remember when I was at school, we had a careers day, and of all the stalls, there was someone there talking about marine biology and how you can become a marine biologist. And I just fell in love with that idea, and I really clung to it. So I loved science at school, and I worked really hard, and I managed to get onto a course as a marine biologist, and that's kind of where my love of the outdoors and the wild really came into its own. Um, but moving into TV, I grew up on a council estate. I didn't know anyone that worked in TV. I had never met anyone that worked in TV. I didn't even know it was really a job you could do. And so I didn't, when I started out, I didn't do it actively thinking I was going to go and work on those incredible programs that I'd seen, Blue Planet and Planet Earth. I just didn't know that was even an option for someone. So when I had finished and got my degree as a marine biologist, I sent out a million emails trying to find somewhere to work in conservation, working with wildlife. And the one I got back was from a tiny company who made environmental films. So they made little videos for charities and NGOs. It was at the time when YouTube was just kind of kicking off, and companies wanted to put videos onto their website, embed them in their website, and they made those little videos. And we worked with the Wildlife Trust, Friends of the Earth, those type of little charities. And it was through that I met a director who worked in wildlife filmmaking, who was a natural history director. And it was he said, "You'll be really good at this, you should come and work at the company I work at." And that was my first road into TV. And that was probably after about 3 years of working, kind of making these little videos.
Yeah. So kind of, and now tell me kind of what your kind of day job. So as a producer, what would your kind of average day look like? And I suppose that would differ whether you're in production or whether you're kind of about to go on a shoot or whether you're in the office. But just give a kind of overview in terms of what your role or your day to day. Are you coming up with the ideas? Are you? Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear how you're involved in that process.
Yeah. I always say to people when they ask, I say, um, making wildlife documentaries is about 80% office work and 20% shoots. So you're in the office way more than you're anywhere else. Um, when we get, I work on shows that have been commissioned. So someone will have already said, I want a show about, say, lions. So I'll come on board and I'll know that, and I'll be given a couple of episodes that will be my episodes, and we'll usually break them down by ecosystem. So someone will be doing deserts, someone will be doing plains, someone will be doing grasslands. And so I'll know that it's about lions and that I'm doing deserts. And that's all the information I have. So from there, I work with an AP and a researcher to develop the editorial story for the episodes that I'm working on. So what lions are we filming? Why are we going to go and film them? What new behaviors can we capture? Can we film in a different way? Is there new technology that can take us closer than ever before? It can get us to locations where we've previously not been able to go. Can we film at night when we haven't been able to film with those animals before? So what can we do to discover more about the world of lions or the animals that we're filming? And then we get into the nitty gritty. So it's all well and good to have an incredible idea, or we'll go and film the desert lions in Namibia. But actually, when you get into the details, are they filmable? So, what type of terrain are we going to have to cover? How vast are those distances? How can we actually find out where the animals are going to be when we want to film them? Do we have to go at a certain time of year? Are there weather issues? Are there floods or storms that we need to think about when we're thinking of sending crews to these really remote places? So then we get down to, can we actually get our crews and our kit into position safely to film the animals and the wildlife that we want to film? And then lastly, if we can, and we think of really creative solutions as to how to do that, we work with incredible scientists, naturalists, local rangers communities to make sure that we can get to where we want to be, and do it safely, not just for ourselves, but for the animals we're filming. Then when all of that's in hand and we know when we want to go and where we're going and that we can get there, we head out the door. The last part of the mix on that is that even with the best laid intentions, animals aren't always where they're expected to be. You might think that in June, for every
Exactly.
year for 10 years, these lions have been coming to this watering hole. So for sure they should be there, but you might get there and they're not there at all. And actually, that's happening more and more as our world changes. Animals are so intrinsically linked to the environment, and with a more turbulent environment, with weather patterns changing, with warming and cooling happening at increasing rates across the planet, animals set routes, their patterns that they follow annually, year in, year out, are changing as well. And so actually it's becoming increasingly difficult to predict how and when we can film animals, as they struggle with the changing world, much like we do. So sometimes you will go on your shoot and everything, you'll have your best plans laid, but it won't work out. But for the majority of the time, given how detailed we have to be in researching the locations, and giving ourselves kind of some shoots that are higher risk where we might not get what we need, and some that are kind of lower risks where we can guarantee that the animals will be there, then we can start to create our stories. And that's what we do. That's how we start to capture the wildlife behaviours that you see on television.
Wow. Typically, how long from start to finish would that process take?
So natural history filming is much longer than possibly other filming. So depending on the project, you're looking at somewhere between 2 to 4 years for those blue chip, so those big budget
Wow.
productions. So we do longer contracts than I would say the majority of the television industry.
And filming, how long would you generally film? I know, like you said, it's really unpredictable because it depends on how the animal's behaving, but on average, is there a kind of would it be set that you're going to have a 10-day filming slot, or is it kind of a lot longer? How long do you tend to be away when you're
It,
filming?
it does really depend on what you're filming. So you can have shorter shoots, especially if you're filming small animals or if you're doing kind of in situ studio shoots, we call them. That's where, say, if you're filming something tiny like a frog, you might go to the rainforest where that frog lives, but you'll take your lights and you'll kind of set up a set around where its actual little habitat is, and you'll film it as if you're in a studio. So those are a lot more predictable. If you're filming megafauna, so the big charismatic animals we think of, elephants, lions, tigers, you'd probably go for a lot longer. So between 4 to 6 weeks is quite usual for larger shoots. Longer shoots than that happen often as well. If you're filming in somewhere like the Antarctica, you might be gone for 7 months, filming over winter. So, I
Wow.
mean, there's a real spread in natural history, but I would say the majority of shoots are probably somewhere around that 6 week mark.
What has been one of your memorable moments, most memorable moments? Where is it filmed? Just give us a little bit of background about one of the moments, one of the shoots that has been just quite, yeah, profound for you in some kind of way. And tell us why.
That's a lovely question. Um, so much of wildlife is really of wildlife filming is incredible. As I say, you really honestly you spend years planning one shoot, a 6 week shoot, because it costs so much, and you have to travel to some of the most remote places on the planet to capture that wildlife. So you really do pour your heart and soul into these shoots. One really memorable one for me is I filmed desert hyenas, so they're brown hyenas, not the ones from The Lion King, the spotted laughing hyenas. These are kind of their gentle cousin. So they're smaller, they're very shaggy, they are much gentler, they're almost exclusively scavengers, not hunters. Um, like large dogs. Still, a fair size of a hyena, but very gentle and almost exclusively nocturnal. So you might live with brown hyenas in your area for years and never ever see them. And we worked hand in glove with this incredible organization called the Brown Hyena Project, and the lead scientist, Ingrid, who had been studying hyenas for 25 years. And where we were able to film them is a place in Namibia, um, out in the desert where the dunes roll down to the sea, the Namib Desert. And the specific area of the Namib that we were filming in had been closed to all people for 100 years. It used to be a diamond mine, and they still did a little bit of mining. But because of that, from the day diamonds were discovered over 100 years ago, all the way through to today, there's been no human habitation. It's all fenced off, and the only way you can get through there is through the secure gates. And once you get inside, it's like an ecological Eden. No one's been there. There's been no building. Um, been no human impact on that land apart from, of course, the diamond mine. And it's filled with these ghost towns, these Victorian ghost towns, which were of the original miners in the Victorian era, who have long gone, and it's all being reclaimed by the desert, by the dunes. And it's just this spectacular wilderness. It's huge. It's about the size of Wales. And so you're driving out hours and hours and hours in through the dunes into the desert, and you stop at this place where these dunes literally roll down into the Atlantic Ocean. It's unbelievably beautiful, and you're there with your crew and the scientists, and you know that you are the only people around for 100 miles. And we're filming at night under the full moon with the stars and the ocean, and it was just, I'd never been somewhere so wild and so remote and so beautiful. And it really made you think about your place in our world. It was an incredible experience.
Wow, just the description sounds so magical. And actually, whilst talking, we can really hear your love and your passion for kind of nature and, just the natural things, which is just so delicious. Guys, don't forget to put your questions in chat. I've been sent a question by my son who aspires to be, he wouldn't ask himself, but he sent me a question as he aspires to be a natural filmmaker. So I'm gonna ask this question of finding the stories or deciding on the stories or what it is that you're going to capture. And I know that you say you kind of join the team once the stories or once it's been decided what you're going to do, but how does the part before you join happen? Do they kind of sit around and say we haven't got enough docs on lines, let's do another doc online? What's the development? Give us a little bit of background on the development process.
Mm, Development in natural history is tricky, because a lot of times people don't know what they want, and obviously you're quite far out as well. So you might be commissioning now in 2024 for something that's going to deliver in 2028. So you're not quite sure what the landscape is going to be like when you get there. I think they're a bit cyclical, so they might say, do you know what? We haven't had a show on sharks on the BBC or on National Geographic for the last 4 years. We should do something else about sharks. I'm sure that there's some new science that we could investigate there. It might be an interesting place in the world. So if there's a lot of change happening, or if there's been an incredible ecological forward movement. So something really interesting is happening, like humpback whales are coming back to Alaska for the first time. That would tee off the development. Oftentimes, it's us as a development team. We we look for new and interesting stories that we could pitch as part of a documentary series. So we'll be speaking to scientists, we'll be reading journals, we're making sure we're on the beat for all new science, all new discoveries that are happening. We'll know all of the different ranges. We follow all the social medias to make sure that we're on top. You know, if there's a really interesting lion pride, if there's an incredible elephant that's, you know, doing a new behavior, if there's um, a group of sea lions down in South America that have been spotted for the first time. So we will make sure we're across all of those new stories. But really, it's working hand in glove with the frontline people. So it's scientists, conservationists, rangers. Those are the people where we can get the ideas. Um, if there's a new um, discovery that we can film, and then we will package that into a show, and we'll think thoughtfully about who are the broadcasters. So how you would package something for National Geographic would be very different as to the BBC, but also where is that show sitting? Is it purely a wildlife show? So is it like Planet Earth, where it's just all about the wildlife, you want to see sequences across the globe? Or is it a human people interaction? So is it like My Octopus Teacher, where actually it's the intrinsic relationship between people and wildlife that you're trying to capture? um, and actually, I think one of the other areas is we get a lot from just people who passionate people. So people making their own wildlife documentaries in their back garden, people taking photos of the wildlife that is moving them, student films. You know, we follow all of those things because everyone, as they move through life, has a different experience with nature. And if they're documenting that, if they're putting it out on YouTube, TikTok, those are areas we might see something and think, wow, that moment is incredible. We should get in contact with that person and find out a little bit more. So it really is just looking across everywhere we can to make sure we're on top of all the new wildlife stories that are happening around the world.
And I think that leads quite nicely to the next question. If you have aspirations of being a wildlife or kind of moving across into this genre, so I know in our Breakthrough Leaders program, we had a few people that were really keen to move across into this genre, or like my son, you're kind of starting out your journey and want to get breaking. What advice is it as simple as kind of just documenting the wildlife around you? What advice would you give?
Wha-
And if you live in London, that might be difficult. Like I was like, when you were talking about, like, yeah, I was like, what school do you go to?
How
Because
do
I was
you
going to ask actually,
know?
well, like, what school do you go to that they give you kind of like be a marine biologist? Like, in London, that's really rare. So that's delicious. Where are you based? You're clearly not based in London, right? Where are
Well,
you based?
so a few things. So firstly, London has some absolutely brilliant, amazing wildlife. And if you are in London and you want to get out and you're not quite sure how to do it, look up the organisation Flock Together. Um, they are a collective of Black wildlife enthusiasts, Black and all global majority people. Everyone's welcome, but it's really for our community. And they're specifically in love with the birds of London and the UK. So if you want to go
Oh,
out on a
wow.
wildlife walk with a group of people, a group of people of colour, then get with them. They're doing it in London all the time and they are absolutely phenomenal. So there's a little road into, it's called Flock Together. Absolutely amazing organization. So get out, join them, go on a walk. I'm sure there'll be a walking group as well. I'm not sure about the ones in London. In Bristol, we've got our very own called Step In Sisters, where we head out into the countryside and explore it together. So there are definitely a lot of people of colour because historically, traditionally, we as people of colour have been kept away from wildlife spaces, from wild spaces. And I think it is one of the greatest tragedies that is happening. You know, yes, I suppose people of colour do tend to live in the UK. We do tend to live in more urban areas. But I think it goes deeper than that. I think sometimes when we go out into wild spaces, we feel unwelcome or like we stick out. And I went to this incredible talk by David Olusoga, and he was saying that with the National Trust, so National Trust properties across the UK, only 1% of visitors are people of colour. 99% of visitors are
Wow.
white. And so if you go into those spaces and you are feeling a bit alone or isolated out of place, I think it is very reasonable because those are the stats. And so there are these incredible groups like Flock Together, like Stepping Sisters, that are supporting, advocating, and getting us out into wildlife in urban areas as well as in the wider um, UK. So that would be one point. So the next point would be, I mean, getting into television, as you know, Simone, is difficult. For everyone. We're going through a really tough time in the industry. There's quite a big economic downturn and a lack of commissioning that are affecting freelancers across the board. It seems to be improving. It had been up to 70%, but now it's around 50% of freelancers in the creative industries that are out of work. So it is a particularly difficult time. That said, there's always going to be a few job roles going, and if it's your passion, that shouldn't stop you. I just think when I speak to young people looking to get into television, especially specialist factual, I always say, and I think it's something we all need to be doing, have a side hustle. What else are you doing that's going to support you? TV is unstable and roles can be infrequent. So is there something else you can do in parallel that you can turn to when you haven't got a contract for television? And I think if you can do that, you can build a lovely career where you get to do TV, but you also get to have some money. Um, the next thing I'd say is for natural history specifically, getting into the industry, they do run some really fantastic schemes and apprenticeships through the BBC, through Channel 4. So I'll definitely keep my eye on those and make sure I was applying to everything that came up. We also have our own wildlife festivals. So we have Wild Scream, which is hosted here in Bristol, where I live. And we have Jackson Wild, which is over in America in Wyoming. And they often have schemes and bursaries to support people to go to those, to either at an entry level volunteer at the festival, or at a kind of early or mid career attend the festival. So I would really look into going to those because they're great opportunities to meet wildlife producers, directors, commissioners, production managers, to network. As we say, network is your net worth. And to also see content that's been made around the world. Um, Natural history's kind of mecca is here in Bristol. That's because this is where the BBC Natural History Unit was established way back when David Attenborough was making those first natural history documentaries to ever go on TV. And since that was here, a little cottage industry of natural history has sprung up in Bristol. But it's difficult. I mean, there are very, very, very few people of colour working in specialist factual in natural history. Um, I looked at the statistics. So we make up about Black people, people of colour. We make up about 13% of the UK workforce. It's about 8% of factual roles. Uh, Carried out by Black people, Black and global majority. Um, when it comes to specialist factual, I would say the statistics around it drop significantly. I couldn't find anything official, but if it was more than 2%, I'd be surprised. 1% of factual producers are Black.
Wow.
1% of factual producers are Black.
Wow.
I mean,
That's
when you think of that,
shocking.
so Simone, when you said at the beginning, you don't often think of women of color working in this role, you would be absolutely right. There are people. There's an incredible producer called Faith Mzimbi who works here in
We
Bristol
know
as
Faith.
well.
We know
Yeah,
Faith. We got a
you
lot of love
know
for Faith.
Faith.
Yes, we know Faith.
Love Faith.
Yeah, we do.
We have our own diverse group where we meet up kind of once a month, and all 10 of us have a great time and talk about how can we empower and change our industry. Um, it it's a weird space to be in because it is so exclusive, or gate kept as well. There's a lot of gatekeeping around it, and it's for all the obvious reasons you can imagine. I mean, they say, oh, we want more diverse talent, we want more diverse crews, and yet they want every single person that comes to work as a researcher to have a degree, and yet they want to hire people that have dive experience or climbing experience. Do you know how expensive that is, and how unrealistic it is that anyone apart from people in that top socio-economic echelons would be able to come in with that experience as a 20-year-old? We There are small changes
So how do people get in?
that
So how do people get in? If that's, I mean, if those are kind of, how do people get around some of those obstacles? Is it that they should be going? And I was also going to say, what should people be going out there making their own wildlife films? Is there any other kind of routes that can kind of help you stick out a little bit more if you don't have the kind of access to those resources or those kind of privileges to do?
Yes and no. It's a lot of luck, I think. That's why I think going to the events, so going to come down, do Wildfest, get on a scheme, get on a bursary so that you can support and fund yourself and get here and do it. Go and see about the apprenticeships. Go and speak to the organisations that are working around TV, like Creative Access and screen skills, to get in onto productions as you want to, because actually just doing it, just standing out on your own, I think is almost impossible in this day and age. There are success
Wow.
stories. I worked with this incredible, well, she's a junior researcher now, called Tawana, and she is from Bristol, and she really wanted to work in natural history, and she managed, through sending CVs and doing work experience, to get in with a couple of companies and get a few kind of credits on her CV, and then she managed to get a job at one of the biggest studios here, as a logger and junior researcher. So it can happen, but it's difficult, and it's not just you. It will take a little bit of luck, being in the right place at the right time. So I think if it's something that you're really genuinely interested in doing, I think you should absolutely film what you can. It doesn't have to be an incredible camera and sound kit. You can get out there, as you know from one of these sessions, with your mobile phone, and you can film something that's absolutely brilliant. If you miss that session, go back and watch it, and go and start filming on your mobile phone, and you can put those online. TikTok is an area that natural history just has not managed to get into. I think because we're all quite antiquated here, and natural history moves so slowly. There's no big thing happening on TikTok that natural history is doing yet. If you could be that person delivering TikTok, speaking to the younger generations, the Gen Zs, the Gen Alphas, who don't come to our linear programming like the older generations, I think you could be in with a great way to break into natural history in an innovative and exciting new way.
No, I really take them board. We have somebody from TikTok coming on Friday to come and talk about how best to utilize TikTok and how to monetize your money or monetize your content on TikTok as well. So I definitely encourage people to get involved and come to that session. Also, like, what if you're a producer or you've got a story around wildlife that you want to make? What would be the route? So we've spoken a little bit in terms of how, if you wanted to work in wildlife, what if you've got a story or you've got a burning, you've got a burning passion and you want to tell a story, you want to get a commission. What are your thoughts? Have you got any advice around that? What is the route as a filmmaker, not documentary filmmaker, rather than wanting to work
Hmm.
with an organization?
It would depend on the type of film. So if it was like a purely blue chip film, so that's one where it's just wildlife, very high budget, I think you'd have to go for a co-production with a company that has delivered a program like that. I like the big broadcasters, because these shows are so expensive. We're talking around £1 million per episode, if not a bit more. They are very,
Wow.
very, very reluctant to just give a show like that to a company that has never delivered a production of that breadth before. What they do is they will hothouse a small production company who have come up with the idea with a larger production partner. Sometimes that might be you suggesting it. So you might say, look, we want to make this incredible show about Botswana. I've got all this access in there. I've got all these incredible stories. Um, but I need to think of someone who I could work with. You might find a company that has done a lot of shows in Botswana of a similar vein, and you might approach their development
Mhm.
team and talk to them about the idea and then go to a broadcaster together. Or you might approach the commissioners direct and say, look, this is incredible. They might look at the story and think, yeah, you're onto something, but we can't just give it to you because you're too small and you've never delivered something on that scale before. So they would suggest, why don't you partner up with X, Y, or Z company and that as co-producers, and then they can help you produce your idea. So you'll bring the kind of creative flair, and then you'll get the support, the team, the crew, all of the health and safety stuff you need to execute it. So those are kind of the two ways that you could produce a film. If it's not that kind of huge, massive scale blue chip, if it's more of a beautiful story about a personal relationship with nature, or human wildlife story, or even just a smaller wildlife story that's much more situational, then if it's something that you could film as a documentary filmmaker, absolutely film it. We have these incredible festival routes and wildlife programming, especially ones that are a bit outside the box, so are new or unique, or look at the world from a different perspective, tell a story in a different way from a point of view that perhaps most audiences haven't seen before. Those are the films that do absolutely brilliantly, and you can go down the festival route as you would with any other documentary film.
Mm, definitely, and because at the moment, like you mentioned, it's kind of a bit of a downturn, and I don't know how appropriate this question is because, like you say, the commissioning moves or the production moves so slowly. But that, have you seen a downturn in the kind of commissioning of natural? Is there kind of less interest, or is it still quite a thriving genre or thriving area to be in?
So we have been quite protected from the downturn because of those long contracts I mentioned. So I would say up until last year in Bristol, we were still doing quite well because a lot of people were still working on big productions that had been commissioned 2, 3, or even 4 years ago. However, kind of this year, it's really turned, and a lot of those productions have come to an end. And there isn't very much more happening, and it's really very, very quiet here in Bristol. A lot of production companies are considering closing their doors entirely. A lot have shrunk down to skeleton crews. It's really having a profound effect, and I think that just as we were protected at the beginning, I think that the downturn will affect us for a longer time moving forwards, because when commissioners are starting to get those pots
Mm.
of money and think about commissioning, I think natural history, unlike other stuff, it is quite evergreen. So people can come to it at a later date. It's not in the zeitgeist like entertainment shows like Bake Off or Race Around the World, or Traitors. You don't have to watch it right now. You don't make one season in the summer and it goes out in the winter. We are kind of planning years out. So, and because of that, there isn't the need to make it right now, and also the productions
Mm.
take a much longer time to get off of the ground, especially now we're looking at pooling funding from several different sources. So getting a commission now, even from someone like the BBC or National Geographic, doesn't mean the show will get made. You're often going to need to find additional funding from other territories, Australia, America, Asia, to support the documentary as well. So I think that it is going to be a very tricky road for us to get back. And I think that it's going to be a long time before natural history in Bristol has recovered fully.
Wow. How is AI and immersive technology, or some of the new technology, impacting on what we're seeing on screens? Are you starting to see an impact, do you think?
I don't think for natural history it has that many implications, because even people don't want to see dramatized wildlife. When they come to natural history, they want to see the real wildlife. Actually, what we have a bigger problem is kind of safeguarding our content. So we have to be super clear if anything is filmed not in wildlife. I don't know if you all remember this, but on I think the first Frozen Planet, they had a sequence about polar bears. Most of it was filmed in the wild, but there was one part where they wanted to show cubs in a den under the snow that they filmed at a zoo, and they didn't make a disclaimer about that on the documentary. And when the press got hold of that fact, and audiences, rightly so, they were really angry because they had seen what they thought was a wild polar bear's den and it actually wasn't. And so I don't know if, kind of, in terms of visually, AI will impact natural history, because I don't think people want to see um AI generated animals in the wild. They want to see real animals generated in the wild. An area where it could be interesting is we are starting to do some historical wildlife documentaries.
Yeah, that's what I
So
was going to say. Because I was going to say, I'm sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
Apple TV, didn't
Apple's
they
got a
do
huge
like
one about dinosaurs, and it's a natural history documentary about
that's the one.
dinosaurs.
That's the one. That's what I was going to say. That's what I was thinking. Does it work?
Yeah, so what AI
Yeah.
is
Oh,
doing
sorry. I was just sorry. I was getting excited and talking all over you. I apologize.
is
Sorry. Go ahead, because
AI.
I'm getting excited and talking all over you, and we're talking. You go ahead, please. Finish what you were saying.
AI can open doors to new areas that we hadn't been able to explore before. So history, maybe life on other planets, perhaps life at the bottom of the ocean where we really can't see what's happening. So there could be really fun spaces that we can move and innovate in using AI technology, especially in that visual forum. But in terms of researching, writing, I mean, I think AI tools, generating decks and designing storyboards, all of those things that have traditionally been really expensive and time consuming, I think production teams are using day in, day out to streamline their work. And that does mean you can deliver more for less budget, but there is a kind of a balance to walk there, because you don't want to be working overtime just because you're using a few AI tools, and not get your work life balance right. So there is a bit of a line on that.
No, there is a program I can't remember on Apple TV where there's an interview with a dolphin, is it a whale, and
Mm,
the lady, and they've got this relationship that we think is fascinating. And my son is convinced that we're going to wait. We're waiting to see the first interview with an animal. That's going to be the next big TV moment, which could be possible. Do you think that that's something that's possible with this with AI? Possible?
absolutely. There's scientists all over the world using AI to decode language, the language of animals, and particularly cetaceans, so whales and dolphins. There is already a scientist who has got a computer that has learned all of the different whistles, clicks, and buzzes that pods of dolphins do, that can identify their signature whistles. So those are what we would call names. So it's the name that a dolphin will call to another, only specifically for that dolphin. Um, and as we learn more and more about the language, especially, as I mean, of those of whales and dolphins, we see how deep and interesting it is. And actually, they are trying to decode it, and they are trying to create a language model for those higher mammals. And absolutely, I think it is something we're going to see come to fruition in the next few years. They also use AI to track animals brilliantly. So you can put up little audio boxes across a rainforest that will record all of the calls, all of the animal calls and bird song in that forest. Feed all of that data into AI, and it can tell you which animals are where, when they were there, who was moving through. You can even track your larger predators, so things like tigers, because of all the alarm calls that are going on around them. And so you might not hear a tiger's roar, but you'll know one has passed through the area. So there's these incredible things we can do with data processed by AI to enable us to monitor our natural world in a much deeper way.
Shush. Is mind blowing. We've got a question. I'm a little bit mind blown. That I'm waiting for the interview, the first interview with the animal. That's going to be insane. That'd be insane. We've got a question here from, I think it's Sabrina. I'm going to invite. Oh, she can't because she's using a mobile phone. Can you see the question here?
I can see it.
Thanks, Carina. Great talk. Yeah, wonderful. How do you think we can increase diversity in natural history position? Yeah, and why is it so important for storytelling?
Mm. It's a really good question, Sabrina. So, We'll start with why having diverse voices is important for storytelling. And this, I think, is true across all genres, but maybe particularly for specialist factual natural history because so few diverse voices have been heard. So, every person has an intrinsic link with their world, with their wildlife, with their experience in nature. And for the majority of time, natural history has focused on a very British, a very white, a very male gaze on the natural world. And all of the stories have been told through that lens. If you look back at old wildlife documentaries, you will see that almost every animal is called he, and a lot of he this, he that, and this is animals where they don't know the gender, and barely an animal is in that is a female. Now that has changed a little bit over the years, but even something as simple as that, that men tend to assume that animals are men unless they know they're women, makes the way that they look and view those animals a specific way. And when you're talking about um, the fact that natural history is filmed all over the world, we've got a very like colonial past of it where white British crews will go to a country and bring their cameras, not work with any local people, or if they do, just very much so as using them for their local knowledge, ideas, and contacts without giving them the recognition they need. Now, the truth is that wildlife documentaries cannot be made without the thoughtful, tireless efforts of the people that work in those places with those animals, that have these incredible relationships with the natural world where they are, that know the wildlife there like the back of their hand. And for a long time, we have used that knowledge without giving a platform for their stories, their relationships, their perspectives. And without those perspectives, we get this very bland, one dimensional view of the natural world, and we miss the nuances and the importance of it. And it is a travesty, and it's something that is slowly changing. Funnily enough, COVID pushed us forward on that, although I think that we're taking some back steps. Because of COVID, obviously, we couldn't go out and film. And companies were at a loss of what to do, and they were like, maybe we could try some of these kind of local camera ops, as they call local talent, as they call them. Again, which is a bit derivative for my taste, but so they were forced to hand off sequences to people who lived and worked in the countries where the wildlife was. And you know what? They got back incredible stories, beautiful shots. And what's more, and Faith put this really succinctly to me, is Faith Mzimbe is from Kenya, and she filmed a documentary in Kenya with one of our big teams here. And because she's from Kenya, because she knows the language, she knows the people, she actually knew some of the people in the place that they were filming. Her access and her perspective of filming there, what she was able to understand about the animals, what she was able to talk to the rangers about, and how that they were willing to let her tell the stories in a way that they would have never let a European crew that was just there for 6 weeks come in and tell it, is something that you have to have that relationship. And also, if you're telling a story about where you're from, the people in your community are going to want to watch it, and that gives the documentaries themselves the biggest impact. If we're here to try and change hearts and minds, or to help platform conservation efforts that are happening, or to tell stories that are happening in that space and get them recognition, they need to be seen and enjoyed, and for the people of the place where you're filming, not for someone in England to look and say, oh, that looks pretty. You know, they have a bigger purpose than that.
I mean, I couldn't say. More importantly, no. When you start talking about the kind of change of environment and kind of climate change, we always see that from a very Western lens, but the reality is the global South is going to be impacted first, probably, and probably the worst. and most of our communities are from the global south. So when the way that you articulated it really kind of honed that to me, that these are stories about our families, our communities. I mean, we may, we may be 2 or 3 generations removed, but there's still stories from where we've come from, and some of them are in kind of like, there's kind of history in that and culture in that, in terms of our relationships with the natural world in those spaces, to ensure that we're present in telling those stories is just so important. It's so beautifully articulated by you, and we kind of forget about those. But I don't know. That was so beautifully. And is that why, in a sense, you run your wildlife, your Wild Hub podcast? Is it to kind of encourage more in people? Tell us a little bit more about that.
It's exactly it. So I really want to work with those underrepresented demographics to make sure that more of us are in TV telling the stories and also giving platforms for more stories to be made. And it's not just global majority individuals, it is women. We're very underrepresented as women. It is people from the LGBTQ community. Um, it is all these intersections of identity, and the more intersections you have, the less likely you are to be a part of specialist factual. But it also means that we're missing your voices, your stories, your connections. And it's exactly why I wanted to set up the Wild Film Hub, because it's such a difficult industry to access. It took me probably about 6 years until I didn't, I didn't move to Bristol until 2014, and I'd been working in and around TV for many years before that. And so I didn't want the next person who hasn't got a clue of where to start to spend so many years not quite knowing what they're doing. I wanted to say, lay it out on the table, get all of those industry kept secrets out. This is where we are, this is some of the job roles that we do, this is how some people have accessed the industry, these are some of the issues that we're still having today. um, and really get them out there. I mean, my next one's about women in technical roles, and I don't know if this will surprise the audience, but a group of wildlife camera women here in Bristol did a survey of the from 2023. These are the biggest productions going out across terrestrial channels, and less than 6% of camera roles were filled by women. 94%
Wow.
were men. On some productions, they didn't
Wow.
have a
That's
single female
shocking.
in a camera role. And I'm not just talking principal cameras, I'm talking camera assistant, drone operator. If you're telling like, maybe you can make an argument if you need a specific long lens and a person that's done that, and that person happens to be a man, but you can't tell me you can't find a female camera assistant across an entire series. Come on.
Re- 110%. 100. I mean, it's just shocking. And just talks to how integrated, because it does feel so, even just the way stories are told. I had the a pleasure of judging, I think it was RTS or BAFTA, one of their wildlife sessions, and I did. It was so noticeable that the stories are great, and we love animals, and we're my son's a big. He thinks he's Dr. Doolittle. He runs around trying to talk to animals. So we're really a big family. Like we love wildlife and want to be out there, but you don't feel like you're part of it, because the stories don't feel like they're reflecting of you. And particularly climate change, when we talk about those issues, you never really hear it from a kind of global, or how that impacts on us as a community. You always kind of think, oh my God, we've got to throw away more plastics, but it's a little bit deeper for those living in those areas. So it's such important work that you do. And Grace, and I just pop up her comment because I think that she's uh Canada has the same problem in terms of yeah, same problem. I love my son's been emailing me questions, and I quite love the question actually. Has working with animals changed your perception on them? Has it
Mm.
changed your perspective on animals, having worked with them?
um Interestingly, I think maybe more working with animals has changed my perception of us, of humans. I think so often
Wow.
we think that we are so far removed from the natural world, but actually we aren't. We're an intrinsic part of the natural world. And what I see more and more, and this goes to what you were saying, Simone, is that the impact humanity is having on the world is really changing the face of our planet, and it's impacting our whole natural world. It's impacting the people who live and rely on the natural world. You know, we can feel quite far removed living in cities in England, but actually we're all under the power of nature, and we see it changing more and more every day. And actually what I think we're working towards more and more in television, in natural history, is how can we tell the true stories of our planet? So how can we make sure that our documentaries, whilst they inspire people to care about the natural world because of its wonder and its beauty, also really reflect how the changing planet is affecting not only the wildlife but also people, and having that impact, we call it. So making sure that our documentaries, it change people's behavior, change what we do, is one of the most important roles that we play, in our
As
work
storytellers.
as
There's a
storytellers.
few questions coming up. Sabrina, I hope that you were, I don't know if you were on earlier, but Karina spoke beautifully about a shoot with brown hyenas. Just listen, you should listen back and close your eyes, because I actually felt I was there and felt really jealous that I couldn't experience, and kind of wanting to do those kind of shoots to be able to experience. When you watch it on TV, some of that stuff is so gorgeous. So to be able to be there firsthand, I can't imagine how mind blowing it is, because I know that the TV doesn't often capture just the immense beauty that you see. And then we've got Panish has got a question. So I'm going to invite Panish on screen and see. Yep, join back screen while we're waiting for Panish. What are the chances for a late career obstock filmmaker switching to national history?
Hi, Palish.
Hi there. Sorry, I'm on a really slow computer. I don't know if you can hear me.
You're fine.
Thanks.
I think it's the rain actually is impacting on everybody's computer. We've had some dodgy weather, and it always
Right.
impacts on the internet, makes it smaller. But please go ahead. Karina, chances of a late career obstock filmmaker. What are the
Mm.
chances of that?
I actually think they're brilliant. So natural history is diversifying as a genre. We are looking to include things that we've never done. So how can we make, the first natural history horror? How can we bring more obstock? Actually what we're finding is audiences are much more responsive to people, on camera in the natural world than they are to just those blue chips, and so we're definitely looking to make way more of those programs. I don't know if you've seen Big Cats 24/7, which is just out on the BBC. It's coming out every Sunday. But those, we're relying on people with obstock experience that can come in and work hand in glove with traditional natural history crews to show us how can we deliver kind of an observational documentary about being on location, which is exactly what Big Cats 24/7 is. It follows the work of these incredible camera ops and conservationists, as they document the lives of the animals. So there are incredible intersections. We want to do way more in adventure, in travel, in food. We want to be bringing other genres into natural history to keep it fresh and interesting. As I mentioned, we've got a bit of a problem with those younger generations, and actually they want to see things that are much more raw, much more authentic than just these beautifully polished final products. They know that the natural world is no longer pristine, and they want to really hear what's happening and get the authentic view. So if you've got an idea, and oftentimes in the job descriptions they'll put that they want someone with obstock experience, which a lot of natural history people don't have. So definitely keep looking, keep applying, keep an eye on those shows. So if you've seen a show that has a big obstock element, if a season 2 is coming out, get your CV into the company. Absolutely. Meet the company for a cup of tea just so you've met them before.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm not sure that I think you've answered this. Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Pelish. It's great to have you here with us. So in terms of kind of, let's sum, I know that we're kind of reaching the end, so I want to kind of sum up in terms of any advice that you would give, just kind of re-emphasize any advice that you would give for aspiring film storytellers that want to kind of tell their stories about animals. And then I I love this question. And I think you might have answered it before, but I'm going to ask the question again and maybe in a slightly different way. What can society learn from animals? Do you know what can we be taking from animals? And I know that you talked about the
Mm,
changing environment and the changing world, but
mm.
is there anything else society can learn from animals? But before doing that, give us kind of 3 tips, 3 pieces of advice. You're aspiring to be a storyteller of animals, of the natural world. What was your 3 tips or what 3 pieces of advice would you give?
So number one, as I mentioned, but it would be make sure you're diversifying your revenue streams. So working in natural history is great, but it is going to be a long and tricky road to get there. So what else can you do in tandem that you can to help you support yourself? What else is it that you enjoy? Are you a great photographer? Do you love cooking? It doesn't matter what it is, but what else could be your side hustle to help support your natural history career? I think that's going to be important moving forward. I think we're all going to have second and third jobs. Number two is that just remember there's a story that only you can tell. What unique access do you have? Where would you want to tell your story and why? What can you bring to that story that no one else can? Is it because you are from that place? Have you got a connection with the Caribbean, Africa? Is it Kenya, Namibia, Nairobi? Like where are you going to set that story and why is it a story only you can tell? And if you can bring that unique lens and that unique perspective and that unique access to the story, that's going to set you up for winning. Don't wait, don't wait to get a job as a BBC researcher or a BBC production coordinator. That might not happen. Start filming, get out in nature, get it up on TikTok, get it up on YouTube. Um, Apply for those schemes, for those bursaries, go to the festivals, get support from all of these incredible areas like the film and TV charity, Screen Skills. There's a lot of bursaries out there that can help support underrepresented demographics into getting into creative industries, the Media Trust. So just start doing it, start applying, start going for stuff.
Don't think about it. Just be about it, man. Just be about it. Karina, what lastly, because I do think it's quite a beautiful question. I know that you spoke a little bit about the impact, but what can society learn from animals?
So, one of the things I think that I see when I'm filming, when I'm observing wildlife, especially animals, especially mammals, is that they live in these beautiful communities that are dependent on each other. You don't get a single orca. An orca, a killer whale, will stay with her mother in her natal pod for life, with her sisters, her aunts, and the same for the great apes, for chimpanzees, for lions. They rely on these matriarchal societies that underpin their lives. They live together and they help each other. They raise their children together. They hunt together. They mourn for each other. They are these really intrinsically interlinked societies. And we're only really beginning to discover how interlinked they are. And I think it's something we have probably lost as humans, is um, that 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 community where you're living in and amongst the same people that you do for the rest of your lives. And I think that if there is a way for us to somehow regain some of that connectivity, it would really better us as a species.
Wow, wow. And that's why we're here creating community. It's difficult, and I really agree that that importance for community and supporting each other is so important. So that's kind of part of we're here. Lily's already told you can jump on that button and communicate not only with Karina but other people in the festival. There's a lounge space where you can guys can go and hang out with each other. There's networking opportunities, and obviously we have an online platform which you can get involved with and communicate and continue building and nurturing those connections. Karina, that was amazing. Natty, I'm sorry we don't have time for your question, but I'm sure if you reach out to Karina, she'll be able to answer it. He was just asking about the hardest way of pushing different voices in natural history, but you can jump on and talk to him about that afterwards.